Hey guys, this is Paul aka Internet for PokerMarket's Hand of the Day, and this is delving into the slightly more difficult concepts, and today we're going to have a bet sizing problem. So let's go right into the hand. So this was posted on the PokerMarket forums in German language, but we're just going to look at the hand and discuss the action, so you don't have to read any of the German if you're not familiar with that. So we're playing a no limit 25 fast poker on PokerStars, so I guess that's called Zoom. And we're playing full stacked here, getting ourselves a nice pocket queens on the button. And the action is a middle position comes in for 3 big blinds, very likely regular with that open raise sizing, although there is some weaker players who definitely play open raises. Go ahead and 3-bet to, what is that, 8.5 big blinds in position. So pretty standard 3-bet, slightly on the smaller side, but definitely good. And the blinds fold, and mid position comes in with the 4-bet to, what is that, 20 big blinds, so 8.5 to 20. Pretty standard sizing so far. And hero with pocket queens here has to make a decision if he thinks mid position is going to 4-bet stack off pocket jacks, or 4-bet bluff way too much so the queens becomes a jam, but that's very unlikely, so definitely no other options than calling left here. So well played until now. The flop comes 10-3-3 rainbow. We have 2 backdoor flush blockers, but pretty much irrelevant, especially in the 4-bet pot here. And the mid position 4-better goes ahead and c-bets a little bit less than half the pot. That is, what is that, 18 big blinds, I believe. Hero with pocket queens doesn't really have any options here other than calling. Jamming still, I mean, if he thinks mid position would 4-bet some 10x's, and maybe call off an ace-king, that's actually not too unreasonable to push here. I guess pushing is actually not unreasonable at all, but call seems very standard to me anyways. So you get the turn card, and that's the interesting spot to discuss. So turn card brings another 3, so backdoor flush is completely irrelevant. Nothing going on, and middle position goes ahead and checks, and we have about what is that, 62 big blinds left into a pot of 80 big blinds, I think, approximately. So a little bit less than 3/4 behind, or actually a little bit more than 3/4 behind. And the question is, what do we do if we bet? Of course, how big do we bet? What's a good bet sizing plan here? And I want to use this example and to talk a little bit about how to figure out a good bet sizing. So we're going to think about which are the hands we would potentially want to bet here on the turn, and which sizing do they prefer to bet. So of course there's 2 obvious bet sizing plans that are valid here. The first one is just we go all in on the turn, pretty obvious for one reasonable bet behind. The other one, which is maybe not so obvious but certainly makes a lot of sense as well, is to split our 15 bucks into 2 bets, which would be something like 5 on the turn, 10 on the river, or similar to that, maybe 4 on the turn, 11 on the river, etc. So we think about which are the hands we want to bet here, and which bet sizing plan do they prefer. So one hand we could very likely have, in addition to queens, is jacks, and then a little bit of pocket tens certainly as well. So queens and jacks are maybe one of very similar category hands. Pocket tens is very different. Pocket tens is incredibly strong here. Very difficult to lose with that. The other type of hand we might want to bet with is a 3, although ace-3 suited, maximum 1 combo, and we definitely might not have this after the pre-flop action, so that's not very relevant. And then other hands we could have are just the 2 overcards, which are maybe an ace-queen suited, maybe an ace-king even, if we play it like this pre-flop. Maybe a little bit looser hand like an ace-jack suited or a king-queen suited are possible. And then there's also, so these hands are all possible, but all not very many combos. And then we might have some 10x's, which are just the ace-10 suited to 10-8 suited. However many of those we 3-bet and call pre-flop with. Some of those we will have. Now let's think about what all these hands want to do. So if we have a super strong hand, let's go over the hands from top to bottom. So if we have ace-3 or pocket tens, the maximum sizing plan will be to use 2 bets, like a small turn bet and then push on the river. However, if we just push directly with pocket tens or a 3, that's certainly not much worse, so in the end they don't really care too much. And then the next strongest hand type we're going to have are the queens and jacks. Now these are actually, for pushing turn, quite thin, so calling queens a value push on the turn is marginal. It's probably alright, but it's marginal. pocket jacks, then very thin, so still not necessarily wrong, but certainly seems towards bluff if we push jacks on the turn, so probably not good. Then what else do these hands want to do? Queens or jacks, well, do they want to check back or do the very tiny bet? They're actually queens and jacks very good for the tiny bet, as they should have a little bit of value in that, and they certainly find some protection. And then as we go down the hand track, we get to a 10x, which that effect is much bigger. A 10x is certainly not really a value bet, but we do have a high number of high protection value in this. Mid position may very well have a king queen or ace jack or ace queen or a queen jack, which will, you know, c bet and then check fold on the turn. And if we have a 10, we very much prefer those hands to fold. So we like, if we were to bet a 10 and pocket jacks and pocket queens, which is maybe not super clear, but if we decide to bet them, all those hands much prefer the tiny size. And then lastly, what if we have a bluff hand ourselves? We have a king queen which floated like with a backdoor flush draw, where we have an ace queen which maybe want to try to turn into a bluff against ace king, or well, ace jack. What do those hands want to do? Well, they have very good river playability if they make a small turn bet and get called, in that, you know, they know exactly when they hit, they know exactly when they can check back. However, those are definitely also fine to jam on the turn to balance our value jams, so that is definitely okay. So we want to then think about what's the ideal sizing. So I think we figured out there's no hand which absolutely wants to push on the turn, so push turn is out. It's not a good option. We don't do that. Don't push here on the turns. No hand really prefers that option over the other options. However, there are many hands which prefer the small sizing over the other options. So all the hands we're going to bet on the turn are going to use the small sizing. Now the question is how small? Well, most of our betting range for the small size will be queens, jacks. That's just the most likely hand. And then a little bit of 10x. These hands want to bet big enough that our opponent's ace king is not a very profitable call, but only break even marginally profitable call. Now ace king against pocket queens, jacks, and a 10 has, I think that is 7 outs. 3 to an ace, 3 to a king, and a 1 to another 3 coming, I believe. So that's going to be about 7 out of 46 cards, something like, what is that, 15% to hit or so. So we want to give him pot odds with an ace king of a little bit worse than that, as he may donk jam if he hits on the river, and balance that with some bluffs, like maybe as an ace queen check calls, donk jams a king river, or you know, check calls pocket queens on the turn, river is a 3, he donk jam bluffs that, or something like that. I don't know, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but potentially. So we want to bet slightly bigger than, maybe we give him some like 20% pot odds, it would be a 1/4 a bet size. And incidentally, $5, the sizing plan I talked about before, 5 on the turn, 10 on the river, is pretty much exactly that 1/4. So I do think we want to bet the turn here for $5 with most of these hands. Checking back, if we think our opponent is too strong, checking here, maybe even checking back our entire range definitely makes sense. But I do think we like the $5 bet here with queens, jacks, 10x, but also, of course, pocket 10s and a 3. And then a little bit of bluffs, maybe a king, queen suited, ace, jack suited, backdoor flush, and check behind only exactly ace, queen, perhaps, although that might be a bit attackable. But yeah, so much about how to size the turn here. Hope you guys enjoyed. This was Paul for Poker Market's Hand of the Day. See you guys soon.